My boyfriend wanted an open relationship. It'll strengthen our bond, he said, dating a new woman every week. When I finally started seeing someone, he lost it. You slept with my best friend? He screamed. I smiled. You wanted this, remember? Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. It all started 3 years ago. I was 25 when I met Preston. He was 24, bright-eyed, and had this smile that could just melt you. We met on a ridiculously cliché blind date set up by mutual friends. I was so nervous, I almost canceled 3 times. But I went. And from the moment he laughed at my terrible joke about the restaurant's breadsticks, I knew. We just clicked. Our first year was a whirlwind romance straight out of a movie. The second year, we moved in together. Our apartment wasn't huge, but it was ours. We painted the walls a soft gray, hung up mismatched art we found at flea markets, and built a life in that little space. Preston worked in marketing. He was brilliant, always full of big ideas. He'd just gotten a big promotion, and his career was taking off. I worked in project management for a construction firm, a job that was all schedules and deadlines, but it was stable. With our combined salary, life was comfortable. Easy. We had our routines, you know? The silly little things that make a relationship feel like home. Sunday morning pancakes were sacred. Preston was terrible at flipping them, so they were always misshapen, but we'd drown them in syrup and laugh. We'd take long walks in the park after work, his hand always finding mine. I'd even sit through his favorite dreadful reality TV shows while I played games on my phone. It was normal couple stuff. Our families loved each other. My mom adored him. His dad would call me just to talk about the latest football game. We were that couple. The one our friends would point to and say, "See? True love is real." We were the blueprint. And I believed it. I was so sure, so secure in what we had. To be honest with you, I had a secret Pinterest board. It was titled Someday. It was filled with engagement rings. I'd scroll through it on my lunch breaks, imagining the day he'd get down on one knee. I had it all planned out in my head. A life with Preston. A marriage, a house, maybe kids one day. It all felt so close, so real. I was standing in a beautiful, sturdy house that I thought we built together. I had no idea he was about to light a match and burn it all to the ground. The night it all changed started out like any other Tuesday. We decided to treat ourselves and go to our favorite little Italian place downtown. The air was crisp, the kind of perfect autumn evening that makes you feel grateful to be alive. We were sharing a plate of calamari, talking about our day. I was telling him about a difficult client, and he was listening, nodding in all the right places, just like he always did. Everything was normal. Dangerously normal. He waited until the waitress had cleared our appetizer plates. He took a sip of his wine, looked at me across the table, and his expression shifted. It was subtle, but I saw it. A flicker of something I couldn't name. "Hey," he said, his voice casual. Too casual. "What would you think about trying an open relationship?" The word hung in the air between us, thick and ugly. I'm pretty sure my fork, halfway to my mouth with a piece of pasta, just froze in midair. I must have looked like a statue. I stared at him, my mind scrambling, trying to process if I'd heard him correctly. Maybe he said a new bacon relationship or something equally absurd. Anything but that. What? I finally managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. He leaned forward, suddenly animated, a strange glint in his eyes. An open relationship. I've been reading about it online. A lot of couples are doing it. They say it can actually help us grow, you know? Strengthen our connection. My first instinct, my gut reaction, was sharp and painful. Is there someone else, Preston? Is there a specific person you want to date? Because that's what this is, right? People don't just bring this up out of the blue unless there's someone already waiting in the wings. He immediately got defensive. No, no. Of course not, Audrey. It's not about anyone else. He reached across the table and took my hand. His skin felt cold. I just think it would be good for us to explore ourselves more. We're still young, and I don't want us to wake up in 10 years wondering what we missed out on. Missed out on? I looked down at our joined hands, at the man I was planning a future with, and all I could think was, what could we possibly be missing? I thought we had everything. This was the man who'd get jealous if a waiter smiled at me for a second too long. And now he was proposing we, what? Share? It made no sense. It felt like he was suggesting we try a different restaurant, not fundamentally change the entire structure of our life together. Have you been unhappy? I asked, searching his face for any sign I might have missed. A clue, a hint that our foundation wasn't as solid as I believed. Not at all, he said, squeezing my hand. I love you. I love us. This isn't about being unhappy. It's about making our relationship even better. Think about it. We could both have new experiences, but still come home to each other. Lots of couples say it makes their bond even stronger. My appetite was gone. The delicious pasta in front of me might as well have been cardboard. My mind was just a mess of confusion and rising panic. But Preston, he was almost glowing. He talked excitedly about boundaries, and communication, and new norms. All I could hear was a buzzing in my ears. All I could think was, where is this coming from? I wish I could tell you that I stood up, threw my wine in his face, and walked out of that restaurant with my dignity intact. I wish I was that woman. But I wasn't. I was a woman who was terrified of losing the life she had so carefully built. As I sat there, numb, I looked into his eyes. And I saw it. He had already made up his mind. The way he leaned in, the way he spoke with such rehearsed passion, this wasn't a discussion. It was a notification. He was virtually screaming for my approval, for my permission slip to do what he was going to do anyway. Saying no felt like closing a door he was already determined to kick down. If I said no, would he do it behind my back? Would he just leave me? The fear was a cold knot in my stomach. He must have seen the conflict on my face because he softened his voice. Are you sure you're okay with this? He asked, his eyes wide and anxious, as if he were actually giving me a choice. We don't have to if you're not comfortable. It was a lie. A beautiful, considerate lie. But I saw right through it. He was desperate for me to say yes, so he wouldn't have to feel like the bad guy. In that moment, a part of me knew this was the beginning of the end. But another, more desperate part, thought that maybe, just maybe, if I played along, I could figure out what was really going on. Maybe I could navigate us through this and bring him back to me. It was a foolish hope, I know that now. No, it's fine, I nodded, the words tasting like ash. If you think it'll be good for us, we can try it. The relief that washed over his face was instantaneous and sickening. He lit up, thrilled, and immediately started talking about how we could set up our dating app profiles together, how we should tell each other about upcoming dates. It was all so well thought out. It was clear this wasn't some spontaneous idea. He'd been planning this. How long, I wondered, had he been planning to break my heart? That night was the beginning of my insomnia. I lay in our bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the cold space between us that had never been there before. Preston was fast asleep next to me, serene, while my mind raced. What had I done? A part of me wanted to shake him awake, to scream and cry and tell him I took it all back, that I didn't want to share him. But the fear kept my voice trapped in my throat. The next evening, the true humiliation began. "Hey, can you help me with my Tinder profile?" he asked, as casually as if he were asking me to pass the salt. And so I spent my evening sitting on the couch next to my boyfriend of 3 years, helping him choose the best photos of himself to attract other women. "What about this one from the beach last summer?" he'd ask, holding out his phone. "Your eyes look nice in that one," I'd mumble back, my own heart shriveling. Then came the worst part. "Actually," he said, looking at me thoughtfully, "none of these are quite right. Could you take some new ones of me?" Yes. Seriously. His loving girlfriend, was tasked with being his personal photographer for his new life of dating strangers. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling slightly, and directed him. "Stand by the window, the light is better there." "Yeah, like that. Now try a smile." I took pictures of the man I loved, trying to capture him in a way that would make some other woman want him. Each click of the shutter felt like a small death. It was a new level of hell I never knew existed. To show I was being a good sport, I made my own dating profile. It felt like a joke. Writing a bio was agonizingly awkward. What was I supposed to say? In a loving relationship, but looking for a side dish? I felt sick to my stomach. I knew I wasn't going to meet anyone. I'm not a very social person, I don't have the time or the energy to meet new people. And Preston knew that. Maybe that was part of his plan. He could have his fun, and I would always be there, his safe, reliable backup plan. Unsurprisingly, Preston's phone started blowing up almost immediately. He's a good-looking, charming guy. I guess his new, professionally taken photos really worked. Within the first week, he had 3 dates lined up. 3. He'd show me their profiles, shoving his phone in my face as if we were gossiping about celebrities. "Look at this one," he'd say, grinning. "She's a personal trainer at that fancy gym downtown. We're getting coffee tomorrow." I'd just nod, pretending this was the most normal thing in the world, while a wave of nausea washed over me. The first time he got dressed for a date was a special kind of torture. He bought a new shirt for the occasion. He stood in front of the mirror for an hour, fussing with his hair. He put on a cologne I'd never smelled before. As he was walking out of our bedroom, he did a little twirl. "How do I look?" he asked, beaming. "Great," I said, my voice flat. I knew that new shirt probably cost more than he'd spent on our last several date nights combined. He came home late that night, happy and buzzing. I pretended to be asleep when he slipped into bed, but I could hear him tapping away on his phone, smiling in the dark. The next morning, he was humming while he made coffee, acting as if everything was wonderful. His schedule quickly filled up. Monday was coffee with the gym girl. Wednesday was dinner with a woman who was a lawyer. Friday was drinks with someone who owned a food truck. He was having the time of his life. I did something I'm not proud of. One night, he told me he was going to a restaurant with the lawyer. I couldn't stand it. The not knowing was eating me alive. So, after he left, I got in my car. I drove to the restaurant and parked across the street, my heart pounding in my chest. And I saw them. They were sitting at a table by the window. He was laughing, leaning in close to her. And then I saw her reach across the table and place her hand on his arm. He didn't pull away. He just smiled at her, the same smile he used to give only to me. I drove home, tears blurring my vision. Seeing it with my own eyes was so much worse than imagining it. At home, the distance between us grew into a canyon. The cuddling on the couch stopped. He was always on his phone, texting. Our sacred Sunday pancake ritual? He started canceling. Going to brunch with some of the girls from work, he'd say. I knew he was lying. I tried to talk to him about it once, gently. Don't you think you're going on a lot of dates? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He looked at me like I was an idiot. Audrey, that's the whole point of an open relationship, isn't it? To meet new people and have experiences. You should try it too. I can even help you with your profile if you want. But I didn't want help with my profile. I wanted my boyfriend back. I wanted the man who used to love ordering pizza and watching bad movies with me, not this new, polished stranger who was always dressed up and ready to leave. 3 weeks. 3 weeks had passed since Preston dropped that bomb on me at dinner. 3 weeks of watching him leave for dates, of lying awake in bed alone, my mind consumed with images of him with other women. Where was he? What was he doing? Who was he with? I spent my days in a fog at work, and my nights in a quiet, simmering misery. I kept waiting. Waiting for him to wake up one morning and say, this was a huge mistake. What was I thinking? I waited for him to realize what he was throwing away. But he didn't. He wasn't guilty, he was proud. He walked around with a new swagger, as if he'd discovered some higher plane of existence that I was too simple to understand. The worst part was, I couldn't comprehend why. He seemed to love me. Why would you want to burn down a perfectly good house just to see what it's like to play with matches? It finally hit me one night, as I was sitting alone on our couch, listening to the clock tick while he was out on date number 6 or 7, I'd lost count. This wasn't a phase. This was our new reality. And it was unfixable. There was no going back. That thought, instead of devastating me, sparked something else. A flicker of anger. The thought of him living his best life, carefree, while I was drowning in the wreckage he'd created, it lit a fire in me. I wanted him to feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. I wanted him to regret this. I didn't have a plan yet, but I knew one thing, I wasn't going to just sit here and suffer while he had all the fun. That's when Sterling started coming around more. Sterling has been Preston's best friend since college. For years, he was just part of the furniture of our life. He was there for movie nights, he helped us move our ridiculously heavy couch into the apartment, and he was the one who brought soup when one of us was sick. He's a kindergarten teacher, which suits him perfectly. He has this calm, steady presence that just makes you feel heard. I'd always seen him as Preston's friend. He was handsome, I guess, with kind eyes and an easy smile, but I'd firmly placed him in the buddy zone. Besides, he had been in a long-term relationship himself. He first came over alone a week or so into Preston's exploration. Preston was out with a new girl, and Sterling stopped by to borrow a board game. He took one look at me, curled up on the couch under a blanket, and his smile faded. "Whoa, Audrey," he said gently. "You look terrible. What's going on?" I didn't mean to tell him everything. I really didn't. But it all just came spilling out. The dinner, the open relationship proposal, the endless dates, the feeling that I was losing my mind. I told him everything. He just sat there on the opposite end of the couch, listening. Really listening. Not just waiting for his turn to speak. When I finally finished, my voice hoarse, he just shook his head slowly. He looked at me with so much empathy in his eyes. "Audrey," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "That's not an open relationship. That's just Preston doing whatever he wants and using a fancy label to justify it without caring how it affects you." Hearing someone else say it, validating my feelings, made me feel less insane. It was like a lifeline in the middle of a storm. After that night, Sterling started stopping by more often. Usually when he knew Preston would be out. We'd order takeout, watch movies, or just talk. It was nice. It was nice to have someone in my corner, someone who understood the situation and didn't make me feel crazy for being hurt. Then came the night that changed everything. About a month had passed since this whole nightmare began. Preston was out, yet again. Sterling and I were on the couch, watching some old black and white movie. There was a comfortable silence between us, but I could feel a strange tension in the air. I noticed he was fiddling with the hem of his shirt, a nervous habit of his. He cleared his throat and turned down the volume on the TV. "Audrey," he started, his voice low. "I need to tell you something. And it might make things weird, but I can't. I can't keep pretending." My stomach did a weird little flip. I had a feeling, deep down, what was coming. He wouldn't look at me. He just stared at his hands. "I've had feelings for you for a long time," he whispered. "Like, a long time. Since before you and Preston even got together." I just sat there, trying to process his words. Sterling? Kind, funny, dependable Sterling had feelings for me? How had I never seen that? He continued, the words rushing out now. "But you were with him, and he's my best friend, so I never said anything. I buried it. I started dating Brenda hoping it would help me get over you." He finally looked at me, a sad smile on his face. "It didn't work." My mind was reeling. I thought back over the years. Sterling helping me pick out the perfect birthday gift for Preston because I was stumped. Sterling bringing me homemade chicken soup that one time I had a terrible flu and Preston was too busy with a work deadline. Sterling, who always asked how my day was, not just as a formality, but because he genuinely wanted to know. Was I blind this whole time? "You don't have to say anything," he said quickly, seeing the shock on my face. I needed you to know. Watching Preston treat you like this, seeing how much it's hurting you, it's been killing me. You deserve so much better than this, Audrey." I really looked at him then. Not as Preston's friend, but as Sterling. A man who was kind and caring and who saw me. Really saw me. And in that moment, all the pain and humiliation Preston had put me through crystallized into a single, cold thought. Preston thought he could have it all. He thought he could run around town, sampling every woman he wanted, and I would just be here, waiting patiently for him like a loyal little puppy. He thought I was his safety net, available whenever he got bored of his little adventures. It was his biggest mistake. That chapter of my life, the one where I played by his rules, was over. It was time to start playing my own game. I took a deep breath, and I felt something shift inside me. It was the feeling of taking back control. "Sterling," I said, and I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded. He looked at me, his eyes full of uncertainty. He probably expected me to freak out, to tell him he'd crossed a line. Instead, I moved closer to him on the couch. I looked him right in the eye. And then, I leaned in and I kissed him. I should have stopped. I should have thought about Preston, about their friendship, about how messy and complicated this would make everything. But I didn't. All I could think about was how, for the first time in a month, I felt something other than pain. I kissed him back. And it wasn't just a kiss. It was a release. A dam of pent-up hurt and loneliness and anger breaking all at once. This wasn't some petty revenge. It was a recognition. Sterling noticed me. He cared about my feelings. He saw my expression change and asked what I was thinking. With Preston, I had become invisible. With Sterling, I felt seen. We ended up in my bedroom. It should have felt wrong, crossing that line, sleeping with my boyfriend's best friend in the bed I shared with him. But all I felt was an overwhelming sense of relief. It wasn't a meaningless rebound. It was a connection. Later, as we were lying in the dark, the reality of what we had done began to sink in. "What are we going to do?" Sterling asked quietly, his voice a low rumble in the stillness of the room. I stared up at the ceiling, tracing the patterns the streetlights made. I should have felt guilty. I should have been torn and conflicted. But the only thing I felt was clarity. "I don't know," I admitted. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "I don't regret it. Do you?" And the crazy thing was, I didn't. Not for a second. It felt like I was seeing things clearly for the first time since this whole open relationship tragedy began. The person who broke our trust wasn't me. The person who decided our relationship wasn't enough was Preston. Maybe I deserved someone who wanted only me. A small, mischievous smile played on my lips in the dark. Preston's going to lose his mind when he finds out, I said. Sterling chuckled softly beside me. Probably. But isn't it funny? He thinks it's perfectly fine for him to date a whole city of women, but the idea of you doing the same thing would drive him absolutely crazy. He was right. And in that moment, a plan began to form in my mind. A petty plan? Maybe. But after weeks of him flaunting his dates in my face, I thought he deserved a little taste of his own medicine. I wasn't going to tell him about Sterling. Not yet. I was going to let him figure it out. I wanted to watch him squirm. The next morning, after Sterling had left, Preston came home. He'd apparently stayed over at his friend Jared's place, which I was pretty sure was code for some girl's name, but whatever. He was his usual cheerful self, pouring a coffee and chattering about his guys' night. This was my chance. The first hint. Oh, Sterling stopped by last night, I said casually, not looking up from my phone. We had a really good talk. I saw his hand freeze on the coffee pot. Sterling was here? Yeah, I said, shrugging. We just hung out for a while. He's really easy to talk to, you know? He put his coffee mug down on the counter a little too hard, spilling some. What did you guys talk about? His tone was sharp. Just stuff, I said, finally looking at him with an innocent expression. Life, relationships, feelings. It was nice. The look on his face was priceless. It was a mixture of confusion, suspicion, and something else, something that looked a lot like jealousy. For the rest of the morning, he kept glancing at me, trying to figure out what had happened. He was on his phone constantly, and I had a strong suspicion he was texting Sterling, trying to get the details. Over the next few days, I made sure to mention Sterling more and more. I'd casually bring him up in conversation. How funny he was. How he just got me. How we'd been texting back and forth about this new show he recommended. Each time, I'd see a muscle tighten in Preston's jaw. One morning, I was texting Sterling and a smile spread across my face. Preston, who was sitting across the living room, practically flew across the couch. Who are you texting? He asked, trying to sound casual and failing spectacularly. Just Sterling, I said, not looking up. He's telling me the funniest story about one of his kindergartners. Preston tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. You guys have been talking a lot lately. Yeah, I said, finally meeting his gaze. He's great to talk to. He really gets me, you know? That's when I noticed his behavior really start to change. He started accidentally leaving his phone on the table when he went to the bathroom, probably hoping I'd leave mine, too. I knew he was trying to check my texts. The funny part was, I was smart about it. Sterling and I only texted through a secure app, and I deleted everything else. I left just enough friendly, borderline flirty texts to make him suspicious and drive him crazy. He started trying to track me. I'd mention I was going to get coffee at a cafe near my office, and half an hour later, he just happened to be in the neighborhood. He was becoming possessive and paranoid, and watching it happen was deeply, satisfyingly ironic. The best part? Preston's own dating life started to fizzle out. Suddenly, he was canceling his own dates. He wanted to stay home. He wanted to cook dinner together, to watch movies. It was like watching a dog frantically marking its territory, all without admitting why. He was trying to get closer, but I kept him at arm's length. A polite but firm wall. I was always busy or tired. My cool distance was driving him up the wall. After about a week of this, he couldn't take it anymore. We were in the kitchen one night. I was making a salad, and he was just leaning against the counter, watching me. "Are you seeing someone else?" he blurted out. I didn't even pause my chopping. "Isn't that kind of the point of an open relationship?" I asked calmly. "For both of us to see other people?" "Yeah, but who is it?" he pressed, his voice tight. "Is it Sterling? Are you sleeping with Sterling?" I finally stopped and looked at him, raising an eyebrow. "I thought we weren't supposed to share details about our other partners." "Isn't that what you said when I asked about your dates?" He faltered, completely thrown by me using his own ridiculous rules against him. He had no comeback. After that, his obsession went into overdrive. I knew he was checking my social media, my Instagram followers, my likes. He was definitely stalking Sterling's pages, looking for clues. The final straw for him was a simple selfie Sterling posted. He was at a coffee shop, holding up a latte. It was the coffee shop I went to every morning before work. My phone rang almost immediately. It was Preston. "Are you with Sterling right now?" he demanded, no hello, no preamble. "Preston, I'm at work," I said calmly. "But you always get coffee at that place in the morning. Did you meet him there?" I let him panic for a moment before I replied, my voice dripping with false sweetness. "That coffee shop has, like, 1,000 customers a day. People are allowed to go to the same places without it meaning anything." He wasn't convinced. He started demanding to know my every move. Where was I going? Who was I seeing? What was I doing? This, from the man who for weeks would come home late without a single word about where he'd been or who he'd been with. Sterling and I had to meet discreetly at his place so Preston wouldn't see us. When I told him about Preston's behavior, he just laughed. He really can't handle not being in control, can he? Sterling asked one night as we sat on his couch. "Nope," I said, taking a sip of wine. "And the best part is, he can't even complain about it without admitting he never actually wanted an open relationship. He just wanted permission to cheat." Preston, realizing his paranoia and attempts at control weren't working, decided to switch tactics. One night at home, he sat me down on the couch. He looked serious and anxious. And then he dropped a bomb that made me want to laugh out loud. He wanted to close the relationship. "I think we should close the relationship again," he said, taking my hand. He looked so earnest, as if he were doing me a huge favor. I pulled my hand away. The same person who had been happily dating a string of random women for the past month was now sitting there, acting like the mature, responsible one. "I think we've explored enough," he murmured. "We should go back to how things were before. Just you and me. Focus on us again." I couldn't help it. I laughed. A cold, humorless sound. "Just you and me? Like the past few weeks never happened?" "Well, yeah," he answered, confused by my reaction. "Isn't that what you wanted? You've seemed so unhappy with this whole thing." That's when I decided to stop playing games. "You're right, Preston," I said, my voice dangerously calm. I haven't been happy. I haven't been happy watching my boyfriend go on a date with a new woman every other night while barely acknowledging my existence. His face did this odd little dance, trying to look empathetic but failing miserably. "I know it was hard for you. But that's why I'm saying we should close things up again. We can work on us." "Work on us?" I repeated, the words dripping with sarcasm. "Like how you've been working on getting to know half the single women in the city." "That's not fair," he defended himself. "You agreed to the open relationship. You could have been dating, too." "Oh, I have been," I said, watching his face carefully. "I have been seeing someone." He went pale. Really pale. "What? Who? Does it matter?" I asked, leaning back. "Isn't that what you wanted?" Both of us exploring and having new experiences? He shot up from the couch. Of course it matters. Who the hell is it, Audrey? How long? His eyes widened with dawning horror. It's Sterling, isn't it? I didn't say a word. I just sat there and let him unravel. He started pacing our living room, running his hands through his hair. It is Sterling, isn't it? That's why you've been talking about him so much. That's why he's been avoiding my calls. My best friend. I finally stood up, facing him. It's really funny, isn't it? How you're allowed to sleep with whoever you want, but the moment I do the same thing, it's a problem. But it's Sterling, he cried, his voice cracking. He's my best friend. You can't sleep with my best friend. I looked him dead in the eye. Actually, Preston, I said, my voice as cold and clear as ice. I can. And I did. The look of disbelief on his face was something I will never forget. What did you just say? I slept with Sterling, I said, enunciating every word. Multiple times, actually. And you know what? It was great. He actually cares about my feelings, which is more than I can say for you lately. His face contorted from disbelief to pure rage. You're lying. Sterling would never do that to me. Really? I challenged. Want to know what else? He's had feelings for me for years. Even when he was with his ex, he was thinking about me. You're just saying that to hurt me, he yelled, but I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. I wasn't finished. Remember last Thursday? When you were out with that startup girl? Sterling came over. We talked for hours. And then we slept together. He sees me as a person, Preston. Not just some backup plan waiting at home while you live your best life. His face crumpled. The realization hit him like a physical blow. This can't be happening, he whispered. This isn't how this was supposed to go. You know, that was the moment everything became crystal clear. The moment I knew there was no going back, and I didn't want to. If you're still listening to this, please help me out by liking this video and commenting the number 1 down below. That way I'll know you gave me a thumbs up, and I'll know you're right here with me on this journey. Your support is a huge encouragement for me. Please, comment with a number 1, and then listen to what happened next. Preston just stood there for a second, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Then, without another word, he grabbed his keys and stormed out of the apartment. I'm going to Sterling's place to sort this out once and for all, he yelled, slamming the door so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. The second the door closed, I grabbed my phone and called Sterling. He's on his way to you, I said, my voice shaking a little from the adrenaline. He knows. Sterling was calm, as always. Let him come, he said. I have to handle this. He was my friend for 10 years. I owe him a face-to-face conversation. That next hour was one of the longest of my life. I just paced around our apartment, checking my phone every 2 minutes. Finally, it rang. It was Sterling. Well, that was something, he said, his voice a bit shaky. He came in screaming. I'm pretty sure my neighbors heard everything. He kept yelling about how I betrayed him, how I was a terrible friend, how I must have planned this all along. What did you say? I asked, my heart pounding. I told him the truth, Sterling said. I told him I'd had feelings for you for years, but that I never, ever acted on them because he was my friend and you were with him. I told him that watching him treat you like garbage these past few weeks made me realize he never deserved you in the first place. I told him what happened between us wasn't planned, but that I didn't regret it. Apparently, Preston didn't like that. Sterling said he tried to force his way into the apartment, demanding to see if I was hiding there. When Sterling blocked the door, Preston completely lost it. He started listing all these random times you and I hung out, Sterling said, a note of disbelief in his voice. Trying to prove we'd been sneaking around for months. He even mentioned the time I helped you move the couch last year, when you was too busy with work to help. He tried to claim the time I brought you soup when you had the flu as a cover for us hooking up. He said Preston just slid down the doorframe in the hallway and started crying. Crying about how he never intended for any of this to happen. His breakdown was so loud that his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, opened her door to check on him. After she threatened to call the police over the disturbance, Preston finally left, but not before telling Sterling he'd ruined everything and he'd never forgive him. He was back at our apartment 20 minutes later. He walked in and saw me on the phone, giving Sterling an update. He just lost it all over again. Are you texting him now? He sneered. Planning your next get-together? How long have you two been laughing at me behind my back? No one's laughing at you, Preston, I said, my voice tired. You did this to yourself. I did nothing, he yelled, throwing his wallet across the room. I suggested an open relationship to strengthen us. I never told you to go sleep with my best friend. No, I said calmly. You just wanted permission to sleep with whoever you wanted while keeping me as your backup plan. That shut him up. He just stood there, breathing heavily, the fight draining out of him. Then he started grabbing our photos, gifts I'd given him, and throwing them into a cardboard box. I'm staying with Jared, he muttered. My true friend. Someone who wouldn't stab me in the back. Fine by me, I said. Take whatever you want. That paused him. He looked at me, a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. Just like that? You're not even going to try to stop me? Why would I? I asked. You've made it perfectly clear that I'm not what you value. He stopped packing and sank down onto the edge of the couch, looking small and defeated. I thought you would always be there, he said quietly, finally admitting the truth. I thought that no matter who I dated, you'd be there when I was ready to settle down. There it was. The quiet part, said out loud. He went out to experiment, to have his fun, fully expecting me to wait patiently until he decided he was done. I was never his partner, I was his safety net. His guaranteed happy ending. Well, I said, looking down at him without an ounce of pity. You guessed wrong. I'm not a puppy waiting by the door, Preston. I have feelings. I deserve more than being someone's second choice. You weren't my second choice, he whispered, tears welling in his eyes. I love you. No, I said, the finality of it settling in my bones. You love the idea of me being around when it's convenient for you. There's a difference. He started crying again, but this time, I felt nothing. No guilt, no desire to comfort him. Just empty. I'll get the rest of my stuff tomorrow, he sniffled, picking up his box of memories. He walked to the door, paused for a moment, and then left without looking back. The second the door clicked shut, I let out a breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding. It was over. The next morning, Preston came back for the rest of his things. He didn't come alone. He brought his friend Jared and 2 other guys I didn't know. They all looked at me like I was the villain of the story, their faces set in grim lines as they helped him pack. I just stayed out of the way, sipping my coffee. Halfway through the packing, Sterling showed up. He had a coffee for me in his hand. Preston's friends started whispering, but Sterling ignored them completely. Really? Preston snapped, seeing the coffee. You're going to flaunt this in my face? Nobody's flaunting anything, man, Sterling said calmly, handing me the cup. I'm just here to support my girlfriend. It was the first time either of us had used that word. The look on Preston's face was like he'd been slapped. After that, the packing went a lot faster. When they were finally done, Preston stood in the doorway for a moment. I really did love you, you know, he whispered. No, I said softly. You liked having me on call. There's a difference. And then he was gone. Life since then has been different. Better. Sterling and I are taking things slowly, doing it right. There's no drama, no games. Just quiet comfort. Honesty. Some of our old mutual friends have taken sides. Sophie continues to tell everyone her version of the story, where I cheated and Sterling betrayed her. Some people believe her. But the people who matter, the ones who truly know us, they don't. Yesterday, Sterling brought over a stack of his kindergartner's artwork. Your fridge looked too empty, he said with a smile. As I was pinning up the colorful, crayon-scribbled drawings of rainbows and lopsided houses, I felt something in my chest that had been missing for a long time. Hope. It's funny how life works. Sometimes, the worst thing that ever happened to you ends up leading you to the best thing. Preston's terrible, selfish idea to have an open relationship didn't strengthen what we had. It just revealed that we had nothing to begin with. And in burning it all down, he accidentally lit the way for me to find the right person. The person who was there all along, waiting to be seen. The person who chooses me first, not just when it's convenient. So, that's my story. It was a painful journey, but I'm grateful for where I ended up. Thank you for listening. It means a lot.